Good afternoon, shopkeepers and do-it-yourselfers out there in YouTube land. Today we're putting a new alternator on a 2011 Jeep Compass with a 2.4, and I've already got the serpentine belt off. I use a kind of a right-angled, let's see, it's a straight bar with the, there you can see it a little better. It's got an adjustable end piece on there, and that nut holds it together, but it's got a 15mm socket in that that lower bar that goes on down toward the bottom. You can't really see it from up here, so we're looking at it down here from the bottom. This is looking up. There's the AC compressor, that's the crank pulley, and there's a out of focus oil pan. But right up there is the tensioner that we're on. Dang it, I'm trying to, I got my light secured. Okay, that's the 15mm socket that goes in the tensioner pry bar. That's the tensioner pulley right there. And as my handle is up there at the top in the front of the car, I'm pushing towards the windshield of the car, so it's going to be turning the tensioner pulley counterclockwise, and I've got it kind of tied back to hold it out of the way, and after I get the belt back on, then it'll hold enough of the tension that my arm, or that my pry bar will release. Otherwise it hits the upper radiator support, so I just left it on there. Anyway, to get started, we obviously got jacked up and got the right front wheel off, and got to take the lower spline off. There's what looks like maybe 7 or 8 of these 10mm head screws, and 4 of these little plastic retainers, 2 on each side. They go up toward the top, 2 on each side. And then I took these 2 out right here. These are a little bit kind of a monster to get out of there, but just out of these right there, so we can pull that out of the way. We don't need to take it clean off, just kind of get it out of the way. But we have to take and dismount the AC compressor, the 2 bolts in the bottom. There's 2 13mm head bolts in the bottom, and then there's one right up here at the top, right below the alternator. We don't have to take the compressor apart, just dismount it and let it kind of swing out of the way. And there's the compressor clutch connector goes up there between the compressor and the oil filter, and I had to put one hand up on this side of the oil filter to kind of squeeze it together with my fingers, and then pull on it with my left hand to disconnect it. But you want to make sure you get that disconnected so you don't jerk that wire in two. So we'll go ahead and get these 3 13mm head bolts removed and get that compressor out of the way. The bolt on top to the rear of the AC compressor, I'm using a deep well socket because the compressor line is in the way, but I can get enough clearance to get a ratchet in here between the lower core support and the hose with a deep well socket. The other 2, I just used a half or a shallow socket, and I was able to get both of those out. I took these 2 loose before I loosened the back one. This one came out with no clearance problems. The top one I kind of had to crank around to the top, but it came out, and they're both the same length. But let's get this back one out of there. I did go ahead and pull these 3 13mm head bolts out of the lower compressor bracket. 2 of them, well, 3 of them actually, all 3 bolts actually serve as an oil pan bolt, but you know, when you're putting it back in, they just go into that cast aluminum oil pan extension, so when you're putting it back together, just kind of be careful. But that give it enough room to let that compressor drop down a little bit further, and it's not going to come down very far because you've got this is the low side line or the return line. Your high side line's going up your condenser, and it's kind of tight, so it'll move around just a little bit. And you can see let's see, sorry about that. There's the bottom bolt of the alternator, and we can get to the terminals on there. Just turn that compressor a little bit. We can get right up there to the take the cap off of the battery cable connector, and we get right to the regulator connector and get that off there. Okay, we got the bottom bolt now of the alternator. The nut, it's a 16 millimeter. I misspoke. I believe that tensioner nut size is a 16 millimeter. Also took the, hang on a minute, air compressor kicked on. Anyway, this nut got a little tab on it, so it will hold itself. You don't have to put a wrench on the back of the bottom alternator mount bolt to take that nut off, and that nut or that bolt will come out without lowering or finagling around with the engine. And like I said, I got the bottom idler pulley, 16 millimeter head bolt, because it goes in right there and kind of blocks that lower alternator bolt. And so all we got to do is go up the top and get the top bolt out of it. Got the wires disconnected. Obviously got the battery negative cable disconnected so we don't get any arcing down here. So we'll go up there and get the top bolt. It is a 13 millimeter bolt. We're looking through the kind of this core support there so you can see the location of that bolt. We'll get that out of there. There's the bolt out, and then just kind of hit that alternator with a pry bar to knock it out of the saddle of the bottom, the bottom ears that hold it on. And we'll go back down here on the bottom on the side and get this dude out of there. I can't see from there. Yeah, what's kind of holding it is these two ears right there. We'll just stick a pry bar in right down here and push it over, and it'll be loose. Be sure and have your battery cable disconnected, because you will cause it to short out if you don't. There we go. Okay, it's loose. Probably gonna have to set my phone down, or I'm gonna have that alternator in my face. Okay, I rotated the pulley downward so the top mounting ear is coming out first, and that's where taking these two prongs out right there, I can roll that back. And as I'm kind of pulling down on the compressor gently, I can pull this alternator right through there. I did it one-handed, and there it is. And the reason why we're replacing it is that right there. Anyway, we'll get the other one out of the box and get it going back together. I got the new alternator. Before you go to put these on, this bushing that's pressed in there, make sure it's slid all the way that way. So you got maximum clearance in here, so it'll set right on that ear, on that mounting ear up there. It could give you trouble if that bushing is a little tight, and all you got to do is just kind of rap on it with a small hammer to push it outward. Makes it a lot easier to set in place. And it looks like that where that bolt goes through right there is actually it's open where you could just, where the bolt, it doesn't have to come all the way out because it comes up that way. But there's plenty of room. I don't know, heck with it. This way you can see how that nut works. It comes around and hits that ear so that you don't have to put a wrench on it to hold it. All you got to do is just turn the head of the bolt. Anyway, we'll set it up there like that. And remember how we clocked it coming out of the hole, so let's turn around and set it in there. Okay, so I'm in kind of behind that plastic there and got the nose down, and the top ear is in the palm of my hand. I'm going to kind of push over and down on the AC compressor. I'll get it up in there, just kind of roll it up in place. It's so easy, I can do it one-handed. Not really. I need both hands if I don't fall on my face. Yeah, it ain't too hard with two hands. Like I say, that bolt, it just set right down in there. Just kind of wiggled it and it dropped right down in that slot. So we'll go up, tilt it upward and put the upper bolt in. I like to give these bolts, the threads, a little shot of squirrel spit. We'll clean it up, and so they turn in a little easier. And we'll set the camera down, rock that alternator up, get this bolt in. That don't take much. And we'll leave that kind of loose and get down there, and we'll tighten the bottom bolt and get everything down there put together, and then we'll come back up and tighten that up. I mainly wanted to wait and tighten that up until I got down here. I just wanted to make sure that for some reason or other it didn't fall out of that carrier, which it didn't. And we'll get that tight. This bolt here, we'll go ahead and tighten that, and then we'll put this bottom bracket on for the AC compressor, and we'll shoot the lube in the thread holes. These things kind of oxidize a little bit. The bolts were a little bit dry coming out, and meaning kind of crusty, but we'll lubricate them up and then set that up in there and start going back together.